Welcome everybody to another episode of State of CS, and tonight or today, wherever you happen to be in the world, it's going to be a good one. So, my name is Semler. Hi. Joining me today, it's going to be, I don't know which order we're in the overlay, so I'm just going to start with Vince because you're at the top of my chat. What's up, Vince? Everything good?
Yeah, good, man. Good. How are you?
Not too shabby. I mean, I was just got back from Cuba, but apart from that, Colombia too. Had a bit of a globe trotting, round trip down there in South America. Had to come back through Miami, but now I'm back in LA, so it's good. It's good. Natu, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Have had some actual time at home, which has been, I think, great. Lack of sleep, but still, it's always good to be home, right? So, not complaining. So much traveling going on recently that I kind of feel like I deserve to be home for a while.
Yeah, I think that's going through a few of our heads. And the last but not least, Ven. How you doing, Vendetta?
I'm doing great. Fantastic, in fact.
Dude, so good to see you. Because I'm used to Natu. I'm used to Vince like having the facial hair, but like you are fully committed.
This is like a train wreck. I don't know.
Say it was like awesome, but train wreck.
I'm gonna go with train wreck. The only thing I can comfort myself with is the fact that I've seen Henry.
I just feel like, dude, you're like a roadie for like a metal band back in the 90s or something.
Yeah, I didn't get the memo, so I brought my acoustic guitar instead. So I don't get that much stage time, but I'm with the band. It's all good.
You get the chicks, that's what matters, right?
No, not with this thing. Not with this thing. This is like.
I was being sarcastic.
No, dude, are you kidding me? It's like an aphrodisiac. Like you go. I used to roadie for my friend's band, and I would get into all the shows for free, and I'd be like, yeah, we're going here next, and blah blah blah. Dude, chicks love that. It's sick. It's easy. You can fish in a barrel.
Yeah, regardless of a horrible stash, right?
Yeah. Obviously, back then I had like the full beard.
Which you said off air that you're going to commit to fully, right? 2017. That's going to be the year of the mustache for Semler.
I was thinking more, yeah, exactly, like the Hercule Poirot,
Oh,
shit, like
yeah, exactly.
Oh, nice.
I think the Cuban embassy was trying to get a hold of you, by the way.
Dude, like it's been a wild time. It's been an adventure growing this, that's for sure. I haven't grown facial hair in like 10 years or something. All right, let's get into the actual show. So this is a show about Counter-Strike, in case you're wondering, as we go off on tangents. But this is a show about Counter-Strike. Been a few events that have happened over the past week, and we'll go through the list real quick just so you guys know what's waiting for you here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Northern Arena. Going to talk about iBuyPower, a little bit about E-League. And then obviously iBuyPower, the 4 teams that qualified for the big tournament that's happening this week. Oakland is happening this week. So there's also been a little bit of I guess drama, because we always need our fix, right? Just got to mainline that shit sometimes, which is what the community is doing. So we might touch on that as well. The idea of criticism, critique, and straight up just fire banter. We'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So I figure we can start with one of the standalone events that happened. Might as well get our thoughts on Northern Arena, talk a little bit about that, and basically, I mean, did it all kind of like come together the way that everybody expected? And if any of you say that it did go as expected, I'm going to call you a bald-faced liar. So, Northern Arena, boys. Vince, did you have a chance to follow it at all? Did you get to see any of the action?
Yeah, I caught most of it, I would say. Obviously, it's a little bit off timing being in the UK, but yeah, I completely agree. If anyone says that they're expecting the result to go the way it did with Optic taking it all, maybe you could predict Optic to get to the finals, but there were some pretty weird performances, likes of Liquid, for example. I think are definitely underachievers in Northern Arena. A lot of people expect them to do a lot better. I certainly did. Heroic as well, I thought may do a little bit better, but yeah, Optic, this is huge, right? Like this could be their next stepping stone to getting to that next level.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what you need for a team like them. They've had up some results here and there where they've shown promise, but then actually to win a title, even though it's not a massive tournament, but it's still a tournament with some capable teams. So it's one of those factors. If you want to go up the ladder, you kind of have to win these kind of tournaments to build that confidence and feel, find accomplishments, and then that will drive you going forward. So it's definitely a great feat for them.
Van, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, echoing off the back of what the others said, didn't really pan out the way I expected it to. Brackets kind of maybe leading into, being a bit fortunate for Optic in that sense as well, having the French battle happening in the semifinals with G2 and Envy, because Envy were looking pretty good so far during that tournament, and they've just been getting gradually better and better. So, but still, they just still need to take on the winner of that game, and they did so very well, to my surprise. But out of all of the NA teams, I've said it for a while that I feel like Optic is the one that's has the most solid foundation and just how they play CS. So that's why we're seeing them not necessarily winning a lot of tournaments, obviously, but they're doing all right for themselves. Like they're not a team that you can scoff off in the group stages or in a bracket stage at any given point. So I think that's just that's evidence to that point, really.
Well, is anybody else a bit disappointed in Envious and their performance? I mean, granted, they did run into G2 first round of the brackets. They topped their group, did a fairly good job at that, but then I was, with how G2 played in E-League the week before, I was definitely expecting, Envy, who seemed to be revitalized, Kenny S seems to be revitalized, right? I thought, that in this world, if they ran into each other, that it was going to be the finals. G2 had to go and spoil that, losing to Heroic in the groups and come out second seed, so they go into each other, first in the playoffs. But I was expecting Envy to come out ahead there, to be frank. Was that wild of me to think that way, that Envy stood a chance of taking down G2 and going on to the finals?
I think that's fair, especially with how they've been playing lately. Like if you look at just form trajectory between the two teams, and Envy have definitely been looking the better of the two, because G2 has been all over the place as of late and didn't really start off too well either. I mean, sure, they beat Complexity in their first group stage game, but it wasn't like a mauling that you kind of would have expected them to have going into this, because when a team like G2 ends up at a tournament like Northern Arena, you expect that to be more of just like a warm-up kind of deal for them, and they would cruise along to the finals and not really have any issues. But they lost quite a few rounds to Complexity, lost to Heroic, which is a pretty big surprise to me, and managed to barely scrape it out versus Liquid, or drop the map versus Liquid as well, who definitely didn't look in form in Canada.
Well, I mean, all right, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you ask me, like, G2 is the kind of team that it's not easy to play against to start things off. I mean, you don't really know what you're getting into in a sense where their play style, first of all, is like really dependent on a flow, and obviously we know like Shocks and Scream, those guys are the kind of the linchpins of the team. But at the same time, like I find like they're the kind of team that are super hard to play in the situation where Envy is right now, where they're trying to become better. They're trying to become climb back into the ladder of becoming an elite team, but then playing against, first of all, the rivals, and then second of all, a team like G2, in my opinion, is can be very tricky just because of the way they play, and you never really know what you're getting into in that kind of a matchup.
It's like the just straight aim battle. I mean, yeah. What do you think about that? The G2 Envy sort of scenario there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely would have felt like Envious could have came out of top there and taken them down, got further in the event than them, just purely off the basis of Kenny. I mean, one of the reasons that we've had all this drama, to do with Smiths, and it goes back to the whole point of Kenny S. I think if you asked most people, is considered a better AWPer than Smiths, and by quite a considerable margin. So he's been playing super well lately. It incited Thorin to make his video like Kenny S is back. And a lot of people have been feeling that, so I was pretty surprised, honestly, all things considered. But that's the way it goes. What they finished, I think, 3rd, 4th, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a disappointment. I think they would have fancied themselves to get through to the finals at least.
It's just, I mean, that's basically when we talked about it last week. That was my idea, is that they're going to go through first in their groups, each of them. Can't really think of any of the other three. Like Envious did that all according to plan, right? So I mean, they had Optic Energy and Counter Logic Gaming in their group. I mean, Envy pretty much just did work. G2 admittedly had a little bit more difficulty considering they actually had a European team in their group with them. So not as clear cut, but I mean, come on, it's G2. I mean, I was definitely expecting them to top their group and that we would have that French on French action, baguettes crossing in the finals. Bit of a shame that we didn't see, right? Get it. That's what we wanted to see. And then, good thing Thorin wasn't there, right? Because then it would have just been like baguettes everywhere. And he is kind of doing that anyway, right? He is kind of doing that anyway, like remote baguette destroying right now.
Yeah, and
slowly
also,
but certainly.
Yeah, it must be a bit of a frustration for Heroic too. I mean, considering the situation they were in a couple of months back, right before Galay left, and now bringing in like a youngster, and the guy that left the team being the guy who would make calls in mid-round. That's a massive change in the team, right? So I think they're going to be in for a rough ride. I think in terms of skill, they're probably gonna in the long term they're gonna gain, but right now in the short term, they're going to have a lot of struggle in finding the right flow and making, finding that replacement, because an in-game leader really needs a wingman that's going to help the actual in-game leader in making calls, giving vital information. I think that's a thing they're missing out right now on.
Yeah, right. But I think this is the kind of bump in the road that Heroic were bound to hit. Like either way, even if they would have kept the same lineup, I think they still would have run into less than great results in the upcoming months, simply because they went from being a team that was on nobody's map, especially like after SK broke up and they created Heroic. Everybody expected them to kind of continue on the trajectory of the old SK, which wasn't really that much to speak of. So for them finally having a couple of breakup performances and everything, teams are going to take them more seriously, and I think that would have been an issue for them anyway, even if they had made the
it always is, right?
Yeah. And honestly, I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well Snappy played during Northern Arena, because he gets a ton more responsibility on his shoulders with Glaive leaving, and obviously him having to do both early game or early round calling and also mid round calling for them. But he actually performed way better than I expected, given how he has been doing at the previous tournaments for Heroic. And Nico seemed to be doing perfectly fine on his own. So yeah, I think they'll be all right in the end, but I don't think we're going to see like a period of time where Heroic threatens Dignitas or Astralis, really.
I mean, Dignitas wasn't supposed to really rival Astralis either, right? For a long time, so you never know. Well, Denmark seems to be a factory of new teams nowadays, right? Just coming up with new ones.
It's unreal, like the talent that's in Denmark, and that they keep churning out. It's just here's another crazy guy who has potential to just like mess up everybody.
Just make sure they're all single. There's no girlfriends involved, and we might actually have some great teams coming up here in Denmark.
Well, unlike California, right, who have just legalized marijuana, like so long as Denmark keep the lock on that too. Yeah, it'll be right. It'll be all right.
Introduce celibacy to Denmark.
What's this?
Introduce celibacy to Denmark.
Well, I mean, like, isn't that the saying when it comes to Danish teams? The two things that killed Danish teams were women and weed, like the double W.
Yeah. I mean, you can make some great reality TV from CS teams, put it that way. Especially Danish teams, it seems like, from the stories I've heard through the years.
Well, I want to come back on a line that you dropped there, not to that I found pretty interesting, right? Like, every in-game leader needs his wingman, right? Needs somebody to help him. And this is going to come back to Smiths and to Shocks, because I mean that's the main thing, is that Shocks and the rest of the team, and Smiths himself, right, has always been saying that he brings a lot to the team on the tactical side, at least on helping Shocks make those calls and keeping the team together and keeping it focused. And with him basically under the gun right now and not feeling it at all. I'm curious if that is actually one of the contributing factors to the decline of G2, the fact that Smiths has been on a decline and hasn't been able to bring as much to the team as he has in the past to help Shoxy, right, with those calls, etc.
I think there's a limit to how much you can actually help out as a wingman with the playstyle that G2 has. I think that's the biggest limitation. Really,
we always do. Yeah. Okay. All right, Smiths.
What? What's going on?
But there's a limitation as to how much input you can actually have on a team that has a very loose playing style, right? Because you only do so much on each and every map. So unless you're freeballing it completely, which is again very risky, especially if individuals aren't necessarily performing up to snuff, then it's you're going to limit the potential that a player can bring in that sort of sense. And I think you see pretty big differences from like teams that actually have a more structured way of playing and their wingmen and how much impact they have on their game, from the various teams.
I mean, there's, one thing is that like a wingman, generally speaking, like a guy who's helping out the in-game leader, playing different parts of the map will get to see tendencies that the in-game leader might not be seeing and patterns, that then you can exploit. So that's kind of the kind of job he needs to do. And also, there's going to be situations where you're just going to be empty in terms of like, what are we going to do now? We're in a lock. Like you can't seem to find the answers. So you kind of need to have that guy you can rely on, giving you input, keeping the discussion flowing when situation is getting rough, basically.
I feel like you're almost seeing a ripple effect as well, where people like Scream are struggling a little bit right now. His stats in the finals were far from fantastic, from his own high caliber that you come to expect from Scream. Guy is godlike, he's a crazy talented player. And yet in the finals, I'm just looking here, he actually had third worst stats in terms of like KD, in terms of ADR. The guy struggled a little bit. So a guy like Scream, if he's not feeling 100%, if he doesn't have the stability below him to really chime off and start to land the shots, then that's going to be an even bigger issue for GT going forward.
Well,
definitely.
Apparently the Envy contracts come up in January. So
I just saw a picture from MBK on Twitter about like a bit of a basket full of like wine and whatnot. Let me find.
Well, I mean, there's only so much that Sweets can do to keep someone happy, right? So,
he tweets. You can think
Castro's got to dig deep.
Yeah, he tweeted. You can think whatever you want about your organization. Mine is better, and then a picture of just a bunch of different wines in a basket.
Well, I'm pretty sure NBK
for the best baguettes. Love Envy.
pretty sure MBK isn't going anywhere if there was to be some kind of shuffle going on between the Frenchies.
No, probably not. Probably not.
That's always the topic, isn't it? Kenny, Shax, two-star cross lovers. I feel like it's fucking Romeo and Juliet over here. They're about to get together. And it's all going to end in a hideous, double suicide. I don't know, man.
Yeah, is this one of those stories that someone needs to die in?
Yeah, eventually.
Somebody needs to fall on the sword. The question is, who is it going to be?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can always, play around. There's so much things we don't get to see. We don't know from how they function as a team, like the kind of things that matter a lot in a team. I've made changes in my teams in years where, looking at it on the paper, it would make absolute sense that we'd be way better than we were before. But it didn't turn out as I thought it would, just because of how the dynamic of the team changed, and some people just didn't feel comfortable playing in certain positions or having to do some of the slavery jobs, so to speak. Having to be the guy with the nades, all that kind of jazz. So there's a lot of depth into making five individuals into a functioning unit.
Mm-hmm. No, that's the tricky bit. That's the tricky bit. I mean. We can come back to that in a bit, because we also have an interesting surprise story, I guess we can call it, right, from last week at E-League. So, anybody have anything to add on Northern Arena before we move on to a different topic?
I think we covered it
pretty well.
Congrats to Optic. Hopefully Mixwell isn't going back home. Otherwise, good luck. Let's see. E-League Season 2.
Group C,
and that group was supposed to be one of the more clear-cut sorts of affairs, coming into this tournament. When you saw Group C, Astralis, SK Gaming, Na'Vi, and Alternate Attacks, and it just so happens that that's the order that the group finished in. Astralis went on to beat SK on national television in a best-of-1. Are they back, boys? Like, is Anders onto something here, or have we just been calling him an idiot for nothing? Like, what's going on here?
I mean, it's better. It's definitely better. I mean, I think there's a lot to go by. The fact that I can't remember who said it, where Kerrigan kind of lost the team, right? So, like, I never thought he was a magically, like, super insane brainiac of an in-game leader, right? But he would always be able to make everyone be 110% behind him to do the things that he wanted them to do. And it felt like, the frustration mounted so big that it just hindered everyone's performance. So I think it's definitely, it's a new start. It's a glimmer of hope, but the sample size is still so small. I mean, you can't really tell, can you?
This roster.
I think that's the big thing. And you have to consider the fact that, Na'Vi kind of just gift drafted their way into the pits of hell by picking Train against SK for some reason. So, and who knows how, obviously it's hindsight 2020 and pure speculation, but who knows if Astralis can actually do anything at all to Na'Vi. if they play that best of one, right? And then you end up in a best of three with Astralis most likely going up against SK in that deciding game. And that could be completely different. I think, Astralis had the benefit of playing SK on Overpass. Again, not that Overpass is a poor map for SK by any means, but it's a map that they've been going more and more away from. At least that's one of their staple picks. You even saw that in the best of three versus Na'Vi to decide, their fate. Overpass was not to be seen in that best of three. So I think a lot of things went right for Astralis, but it's like Jonas said, the fact that this is a massive step in the right direction for the Danes, because this is pretty much the first positive thing that's happened to them in quite a while.
Pretty much the whole year.
Pretty much the whole year, yeah. Right. Vince, what do you think?
I'm just curious if this is more like a honeymoon phase for Astralis. We always talk about this. A new player comes in, especially if it's a lot of shot calling and a lot of strats behind the scenes. If it's a case if everyone really wants to step up to the plate and deliver, and if that will gradually decrease and the performance will gradually go down again. But yeah, I agree with what Ben said. Na'Vi definitely shot themselves in the foot. There's no doubting that. But Astralis now, we spoke before about how Carrigan maybe lost confidence with the team, or they lost confidence with him. Getting this win is a massive confidence spike to Astralis. Like, this is them saying, okay, boys, we have two of the top teams in the world. Most people put SK and Na'Vi in the top 3, top 5 teams easily. And we've actually just topped that group. Like, that's sick. That's a huge, huge effort. That's a huge result. And maybe this is the kick up the backside they desperately needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the storyline, isn't it? I mean, it really is just like the Astralis show. I mean, we could come back to Na'Vi. We will come back to Na'Vi a little bit just to kind of try and explore what's going on there since the addition of Simple. I mean, yes, they won New York, but it's been looking a little dicey. But yeah, I mean, just to close on Astralis and that point, yeah, it has been a long time in the wild for them. They're still putting in the work. They're still boot camping in Denmark and Copenhagen. I mean, these guys are treating this like a legitimate job, and they are actually very structured, which is interesting considering on the flip side, Na'Vi, who are also one of the most hardcore, disciplined teams, wake up every morning. You're in prac by 10 a.m. If you're late for prac, you're getting slapped, right? You're getting less money this month or something. I mean, it's like they are very strict with how they actually go about preparing for a tournament and playing in a tournament. And yet, when you watch their T side right now, and I think that was the main thing to take away from this entire tournament when it comes for Na'Vi, like you watch their T side and they just look absent. Like they got dumpstered every T half. CT, yeah, okay, that's relying on aim, and Flamey's always going to be able to give you something there, Simple as well. But when it got onto the T side, one thing to note, and what we have to bring up here is that this tournament is running on the major rules. So Starix couldn't be involved in the calling. He was only there in coaching capacity. So do we think that that's like the root of it? The fact that Seized is now calling the shots, is it too much?
I honestly do. It probably has a lot to do with it because, like I was kind of talking about before, there, like the dynamic. Even when you make a change that on paper seems that's going to make you tenfold better, but when it comes to functioning, when it comes to communication, that one player in this case, Zeus, probably had a massive influence in terms of making the communication flow correctly and making good calls mid round. Just I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, but at the same time, when you watch them play, they seem so clueless at times. It's like, what are they doing? Like, is no one talking, or just running around it like 5 individuals trying to make plays? Is that how they're going to do it? Because obviously that's not going to work. So I do think it has all to do with the fact that they're just not like the individuals that do need to make those kind of calls in place are not on anywhere near their comfort zone. Simple as that.
Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's too much for Cease to handle right now. And I mean, I think that's something that was bound to happen regardless. I think Na'Vi, obviously, we've talked about this when the coaching role came into place, the fact that Na'Vi were the teams that got the most screwed over by it, by far, because they just made a roster change with having a coach in place being a part of that plan. So it's a massive adjustment for them. I think they'll even out eventually, but it's kind of worrying the fact that C's pretty much took like the biggest nosedive in terms of just individual performances we've seen out of any player at this level. Just the second he took over, and the fact that he has games every now and again where he does well for himself, but I don't think that's because he's getting more comfortable with the in-game leading role. I think it's more of the fact that everybody on his team at that point is, they're hitting their stride. So if 5 individuals of Na'Vi actually play well, then yeah, your job is going to get a lot easier. But it's just actually being able to do something when you're going against it, right? And I haven't seen anything indicative of him being able to do that for them, which I think why we had like that one flash in the pan tournament at New York. And other than that, it's been fairly disappointing, really, from Na'Vi.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there shouldn't be an issue, right? But and it says like they should be able to come up with an idea. Like, come on, Na'Vi, you need to do something about it. It's been too long now, in my opinion. I mean, you should give like 3 months to a team to get their shit together in this kind of a situation. But they, apart from New York, they just haven't.
Yeah.
Vince, do you have an opinion on this?
I'm curious if there's some trouble in paradise, honestly. Na'Vi have some big personalities. Obviously, Simple is the first guy that springs to mind. And some stuff I've heard, and I know you guys have heard about it as well with Guardian, makes you question, are these guys on the same page? Are they 100% together? Is there that unison, you know? You can have the 5 greatest players in the world together. I remember having this conversation with Natu at the major qualifiers earlier this year. And he kind of touched on this before, that if the personalities don't click, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't have 5 all-star players that just don't get along or don't, you know, share the burden of the pressure. So I'm not sure what to make of Na'Vi, honestly. When I saw them at New York, I thought, okay, here we go. I mean, the stars have aligned. We've got Simple in a team that he's going to be comfortable in. Guardian can go ham. This is going to be the next maybe world beater team. And since then, as you said, they've just kind of crumbled away. They've had really, really lackluster performances. I'm pretty sure almost everybody would have expected them to maybe even top Group C, you know, because SK haven't necessarily looked fantastic themselves lately. So maybe even top Group C, and instead they're in 3rd. I mean, there's no real excuse for that.
Yeah, that's kind of my main concern with it as well. It feels almost like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You can't have everybody trying to be the star. And there are certain rounds where it really did feel like everybody's trying to look for fights right now. Like they're going to be the hero that's going to get 3 kills. And then that kind of throws everything out of whack when you're watching it. I mean, when you have players like Guardian as well, you know, like where is Guardian and what is not working for him to be able to find his comfort level, right? Because this guy has had in history, right? He's had one of the highest levels out of all pros, seen as the best opera in the world at one moment, and now it feels like he's just floating in the low to mid teens every game, and we're never really seeing him take over or really do anything, you know, on point. So yeah, no, like they need to figure out real quick like what it is that's going on. Is Simple just that? Is he coming in and he's obviously going to have? Man, this is a throwback. This is like real throwback to when Guardian was at his peak, right? He was very difficult to deal with. And went on a team level, right? Telling him what to do was hard to do because he was just like, well, I'm the best player in the world, so fuck off. I'm going to do what I want, right? And I wonder if there is that element
lovely
of
work ethic
as well, right? What's that?
Lovely work ethic.
Well, I mean, they do have the work ethic, but I don't know if work ethic has anything to do with, you know, like team dynamic, right? Or I mean, you obviously have to work at it, right, to be able to fit into the team. But on an individual level, like Simple has got one of the craziest work ethics. Guardian for that while I think was also he was constantly talking about it, the fact that they were putting in hours and hours and hours of training. But then, you know, when it comes into the game, if you got to take the hit so that your team does better, you know, are they capable of doing that? And I don't know. Is that what's going on? Is that Simple is just taking over the game and not letting the team function the way it needs to?
I'm not necessarily sure it's on Simple either. Although one thing that is worrying to me is the fact that a lot of the times his massive performances doesn't result into wins. And oftentimes when you talk about, you know, the best player in the world or the best player on a team, right? Like if they have a good game, that's supposed to be enough for your team to win. But in a lot of these situations for Na'Vi, it's Simple can have 30 plus frags, but they still lose 16-10.
Remember that match in Cobblestone at Epic?
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's exactly the one that I was thinking about as well.
Yeah, like 39 frags or something.
Yeah,
he had like 39 or something.
Kills. Because he was constantly having to, he was constantly like rotating over because
saving weapons and whatnot.
Exactly, he was getting a shitload of like exit kills, basically. You know, like low impact frags, really, at the end of the day, because they aren't coming A. He's rotating into B. He gets a couple kills, he gets out. But I mean, so that's I guess an example of like frags not really mattering. So we can't look at that. But even in these like high games, in these intensity games, you know, we're not really seeing it. You know, yeah, you're right. Translate into wins. We're seeing a good performance out of Simple individually, flashy plays, but we're not seeing any game-winning plays
And that's what makes it so hard to really judge whether or not it's on Simple or whether it's not on him. Because if you take that Cobblestone game, right, like Simple does everything in his power for Navi to win rounds. It's just that the rest of the team is just not showing up at any sort of capacity. So obviously you can't fault him for getting a fuck ton of frags. That he's just doing, he's shooting the people he sees, but the rest of the team is not putting him into a position where he can actually win the round off of that, right? But it's definitely worrying, the fact that if you're Navi, you should be able to structure your team in a better way where he can actually have an impact earlier on. So he's not the last guy remaining at every given point. Don't put him on the extremities of the map. If you're feeling a tendency, like on the Cobblestone game, that your opponent is pretty much just going B every single round, then, make an adjustment for it. And I don't think you can put that on Simple, really. I think, again, if anything, that's where you have to look at C's. And he should, at that point, be like, well, okay, stuff's not working out. Edward's not hitting his shots from this and this position. How about you and Simple swap it up for now and see if that actually pans out better?
I mean, Bach brings up a good point in the chat right now, is the fact that, the way that Navi used to function, and it's true, they used to function entirely around Guardian, like the whole thing, which was also incredibly frustrating to watch, because when you're building your whole team around Guardian and then some rounds you just rush out, you don't let Guardian have time to work with the op or anything. Well, that was Kenny as well, but like they built their whole goddamn team around Guardian finding picks. Is it worthwhile? Is Simple the player now, and will the other players on the team, will they allow themselves to actually be like second fiddle to Simple now and say, okay, Simple is the guy we're going to build all of our strats around and see if
that's the one problem. I think the whole ego factor, right, has to do with a lot of it, and also the fact that if you think back to a lot of tournaments, for me, the one team that has a lot of heated arguments and the one team that has players sat behind when everyone else leaves the stage after a lost map, Navi is the first thing that comes to my mind. I remember Katowice, I think it was Navi. They lost the map, and Flamey just sat there basically double face palming while his teammates left the stage, for example. I thought before when this edition of Simple was announced, I figured, I know Flamey, he can be a very, very heat person for sure. No pun intended. So is Seized. Seems like a fiery type. And we all know Simple. We all know what it's like. And a Guardian, a massive ego. He needs to feed. He feeds off getting frags. He feeds off making big plays. It just has all those signs to me that how do we make this function? I even said this in a lot of broadcasts where Starix has his hands full with this team. So in a sense, it's not that surprising that these are the kind of issues they're coming into where there's obvious skill, but who's going to get to be the superstar, right? In fact, exactly, Simple or Guardian, because those two need kind of the same kind of space in the team. They need to be the big guys.
Well, that's the thing. We haven't really tested that theory properly, because old Navi were based around Guardian, and that worked. Even though they had Flame in the team, who still could take over a game on his own, right? And that worked. So Flamey had, in that sense, no problem playing second fiddle to Guardian and having that monster role. But nobody's really explored the idea of having Simple playing second fiddle to Guardian. Because we've never really seen a team where Simple has been in where he hasn't been the focal point of everything that team does. So we don't really know if he could be the best all-around player in the world for all we know. And he could be the perfect complement to a Guardian that's just set into positions to go absolutely ham every fucking game, but nobody's really tried it. He's always been the focal point of every single team. So
for obvious reasons, right?
For obvious reasons. But
in those setups, in those lineups.
Yeah, exactly. And now he comes into Navi where it's not necessarily the most obvious decision to make ever, especially if you can have a Guardian, old form Guardian in your team. Then if you can have a Simple, not necessarily working on half capacity, but not necessarily having to be the frontline man at any given time, then that could be the solution for everything. But again, at that point, it comes down to egos within the team and whether or not they're actually willing to see, sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the team or not. And again, it's going to be experimental and they're going to have to try things out. But to me, that's an enticing thought, having basically going back to what worked for you previously, just knowing that now you have way more firepower to back that up than you had in the past.
Yeah.
It's quite the conundrum. We're all going around in circles right here wondering. I can only imagine how Starix feels, considering he did live under the Zeus era. I always.
They have a long history together, right? Him and Zeus, right? So there must have been a great chemistry going on.
Starix, one of the longest. Wasn't he almost the original member of Na'Vi to begin with?
He was.
I mean, he's been in that org for ages, forever.
Yeah.
And and he went through all the different phases of Zeus. I mean, I wonder if they don't have the right fiery. All I go back to is Pro League finals last year in LA when Na'Vi threw massively versus Fnatic, and it was Inferno in particular. Na'Vi were up so far, and it was just rage on that team. Zeus was raging, and then they went outside, and he just was fucking shouting him down, and I was just whoa, what's going on here? That was super intense to watch. I mean, yeah, you're right. A lot of fire on this team, but I'm wondering, maybe Zeus not being around, is that what's hurting things? There's not some fucking 200-pound, well, he's more like 250, guy who's just going to get in your face and tell you to shut the fuck up and listen to him. I mean, yeah, kind of, Na'Vi have got an issue on their hands. I mean, the other team that we could talk about, hell, is SK. SK, so with... looking shaky to say the least, right? To lose to Astralis in a best of one, granted not on a map that they're super comfortable on, but still there's been some shakiness here for SK for quite some time. So I mean, that's what I want to let's start off with Vince. Vince, what are you thinking about the SK situation right now? What's your read on it?
It's really tough to say actually for me, because I feel like someone like Cold Zero, who obviously at one point people considered the best player in the world. I'm not sure where you guys would come down now if you still think he's up there or not, but he seems to have gone off the boil a little bit. Fallen's maybe not quite up to the same level as he was before. It's quite a tough one for me. I've actually thought about this quite a bit. I'd be very interested to hear what Natu and Ben have to say on this, because I'm kind of a bit stumped on the whole SK gaming. I'm not going to say collapse, because they're still up there on their day. They can still beat any team in the world. They're not scrubs now. They're not a bad team. They're still very capable of taking pretty much everything. But again, you're seeing in Group C that they came second behind Astralis. This is something that you would never expect to see rewinding a month, 2-3 months ago. You'd think SK are guaranteed to come top, if not Na'Vi. So what do you guys have to say? Because I have absolutely no idea what to think about it all.
I honestly don't think... I don't think there's trouble in paradise to the point where people have to start getting worried for SK's sake. I think that'll be perfectly fine. For the better part, the lackluster performance we've seen is they had a bit of a hiccup versus Astralis in E-League, and outside of that, they didn't have the greatest epicenter, but obviously they ran into Virtus Pro, who were just in fucking god mode after losing Train, right? So anyone can lose to VP when VP hit that stride. So again, it's not a big flashing warning light for me, because they've dropped games in online leagues, but that's online leagues, right? Who gives a shit? They don't really matter. SK have managed to qualify for everything they need to qualify through online leagues so far. So, I mean, as long as they're not starting, making massive blunders at offline events, I don't see any reason to start panicking. It's sure, they might have a dip or might be more inconsistent than what they've been in the past, but it's nothing massive, nothing major up to this point. So I think the few losses they've had offline is, well, yeah, it can be expected, because nobody's going to remain invincible forever.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the big picture, let's look at the last 15 years of Counter-Strike. Seriously, how many teams have been able to sustain it, stay in a very, very high level for a long period of time?
We need to have a pipe or something now.
There's 3 teams,
sit
maybe.
In a leather chair, oak
yes.
panels on the wall.
I think off the top of my head, it's 3 teams, right? SK in 2003, Na'Vi in 2010, and NIP.
Yeah. Well, pretty much, and then you could argue maybe Fnatic.
Fnatic,
Those are the teams, right? So it is a very rare feat, and there's a reason for it, because not only do you need to reinvent yourself a lot of the times, because everyone's looking at you. You are the team everyone wants to replicate, basically, because you were beating everyone, right? So there's a lot of pressure, and you're trying to find new ways how to play. But also, CS, in the end of the day, is being on the right side of a lot of coin flips, a lot of simple clicks of a keyboard, basically. In a 2-on-2, that could be a massive difference of winning a 2-on-2 situation where economy is going to be either you're going to be the one gaining the next 2 rounds, or you're going to be on the losing end of the next 2 rounds, things like that. So it is very rare for you to be able to be on the right side of that for a longer period of time. So I think it's only natural to an extent that they were not just continuously winning, because it's just not supposed to happen.
That's actually a fair point that we don't really hear too often. Go ahead, Vince.
Do you think there could be a case made then that it's not necessarily that SK have got worse, it's just teams around them have got better? The likes of Na'Vi, VP, these kind of teams?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think right now CS is a bit of a mess, if I'm honest, because of the fact that there's too much going on. Like, there's so many tournaments, so many leagues, that it actually makes for a worse Counter-Strike, because teams have absolutely no time to friggin' practice. All they do is fly from one place to the other, and all that does is make for a worse show, in my opinion. At least for someone that loves to watch some quality Counter-Strike, we're not getting a lot of it. Like, there's so many teams that are purely struggling because they just don't get to practice. So
that would be my point, right? It doesn't feel like the teams are getting better. It feels like the teams are getting more shit.
Yeah,
and
they are.
And then it's just like, it's just going down the drain, where it's just now, it feels like it was, fuck, man, like, what was it? DreamHack winter 2014, maybe. Like, that era of CS where there were no strats practically. It was just, actually, I'm going to CZ you in the face, or I'm going to op CZ you in the face, or I'm just going to look for duels everywhere, or I'm going to, I've got a Tech 9, my name's Olaf, say goodbye to your team. It's like shit like that where, I don't know, it's really hard to find the depth, and I feel like we're almost getting back into that kind of era now, where teams are just at a loss. They're just they have to reinvent themselves, but like Natu says, they're constantly flying, jet lag, just tired all the time. To be able to just like grind and put in 10 hours of work a day just to figure out what you need to do to win. It's incredibly demanding right now, especially when you're playing officials every goddamn day, because hey, everybody's got a league now. I mean, yeah, I feel like the quality of CS has actually declined, not gone up.
But
this is what's allowing the tier 2 teams who aren't participating in so much, right? Who aren't traveling to LANs every weekend, who aren't, that's allowing them to catch up, because the level of the top is coming down, their level is going up, because those guys are hungry as fucking, working constantly and have the time to do it. And so then we start to meet a little bit.
Imagine like 10 years ago, we lived in a world where you had 2 CPLs. You had a WCG and an ESWC a year, and that's all that mattered. Like, there was like 3-4 months between all these events, pretty much. So you'd go back home from an event, take a couple of weeks off, be like, all right, and then you'd have a couple of months of a brutal grind towards the next big tournament, basically, for a couple of months.
Peak. It was fun because I was listening to an interview with Thorin, right? An interview that Thorin did with Fatality. And it was really fun to listen to that interview. I highly recommend it, guys. It's on his what's it called again? Recollections? No.
Reflections.
Reflections. There you go. Yeah. It's his Reflection series on YouTube, on his channel. Go and check it out. It's super sick. But this interview with Fatality was super cool, because Fatality basically got into like the method that he used to train, and how he prepared, in such a way that he would peak. He would hit his peak exactly at the right moment for a tournament. And so he'd get super frustrated. He'd actually not show up to tournaments if the tournament came to him too late, didn't give him enough time. They said, hey, can you come to our tournament? 2 weeks notice. Fatality was like, no, fuck off. I don't have time to properly prepare and practice. I'm going to prepare for this tournament that I know is coming in 2 months, because I'll be able to space it out, and I'll peak at exactly the right time with that tournament, right? And right now it's like CS teams are expected to just be at peak the entire time. They have no time to actually come down again and like develop that rise, that up and down. The up and down is them getting bodied out of a tournament when they're at their down, and then they have to figure out how to come back up again. I don't know.
Yeah, this is horrible for teams like Na'Vi. It's horrible for teams like FaZe, Astralis. All these guys are like struggling to find any time to just stay low, out of the radar, out of everyone's viewing eyes, basically, and be able to grind things out, find mistakes, and just work on them for a solid few weeks. So, yeah, I mean, it is just the fact is CS is worse.
And I mean, well, here's the funny thing as well. And who thought there would be a correlation between these two things of actually taking time off to actually, hone your game and getting better and actually doing well? It's like BP. Like, they're actually one of the few teams that will actually be like, well, guys, we're not coming to this tournament. Like, we're not going. We're not going to show up. And they do, like, they still haven't mastered it, because they still showed up for Star Ladder. Yeah. And, that's a chapter of his own. But to be fair, they did their best to actually get out of there as quickly as possible. But like for the better part, like certain teams realize the importance of actually taking time off to hone their game, and for VP, it's been working out pretty nicely. I'd say like they've actually.
I think they were the first defenders at one point, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
they went to everything.
Oh yeah, they were, but again, it's like learning from your mistakes, right? And then you still have the usual suspects when it comes to just attending every fucking tournament you can, and then being annoyed by the fact that you don't have time to practice. But again, you're kind of doing that to yourself at that point.
Especially now that some teams don't even have the choice.
Oh yeah, that
their org is getting tied up in things like ESA or PA or whatever. Like the teams aren't even gonna have a choice. It's gonna be like, actually, you need to play in that league, and they're like, "But what do you mean? It's 4 months long, and just shut up." Sorry, that's all right. You kind of have to play in the league.
We signed a deal.
It's just
and that's obviously out of the control of the players. Like they can't be faulted for that. But yeah, no, that's a bit of a finicky situation where obviously like organizations wants to get their brand out as much as possible. Have their sponsors shown at any given instance possible, but the players also, need to breathe, need to actually work at their job and not just be puppets who just go to tournaments to show up.
Well, VP pulled out.
You have sponsor pressure as well. Like players, I talked with players recently who are going to events only because their sponsors are you need to be at this event because we need to do this with you. And so the players don't even want to be at the event. They're just going because it's like, if we don't go, then our team is going to lose money. Then, it makes our lives more difficult. We have to go because we are beholden to this sponsor. So, there's some, it's interesting times. I mean, it's really interesting times.
I know there's been a few teams, organizations down the line that I definitely just see the dollars, but don't see how the team actually needs to play, and that kind of a balance is hard to find, I think. And I think a lot of bosses seem to be have lost kind of like oh shit, the understanding of what it means to not go to everything.
Make the Skrilla.
In
words of Thorin.
So the thing is, didn't VP pull out of Oakland and Heroic came in to replace them, right?
Yep,
but
that's right.
It's I guess my question that I'm curious from your guys' perspective is, if you've highlighted the issue, what do you do about it? Is it just a case of more teams boycotting more events, or not even boycotting, just not going to more events? Like, what's the way that you get around this? I mean, you've identified the issue, but what's the resolve?
You just don't know.
I think that's the issue though, because here's the thing. There's a limit to how, this is what Semler talked about, the fact that there's a limit to what the players can actually pick and choose from. Right? Because at a certain, so you have, let's say, three instances that you have to go through, right? To find out whether or not you have to go to a tournament or you can leave it, right? It's first you have players, whether or not players want to go there. That's step one. And the players give their initial opinion on it, and then it goes to the team. And the team is like, okay, we hear you, and we're going to take this into consideration, but we need to check with our sponsors, right? So sure, though, you could end up in an instance where all 5 players in a team are like, no, fuck that, we don't want to, set foot at this tournament for whatever reason, because it's too hectic. We just want some time to breathe, have 2 weeks where you can practice and focus on the tournament that's coming up in 2 months' time. But they say that to the team. The team goes, okay, well, let's check with our sponsors. The sponsors are like, no, well, sorry, this is kind of a big deal in terms of where our market share is this is a pretty big part of where we want to, get our brand out. So you have to be here. At that point, the team can't go back to the team and be like, well, you can skip this because the sponsor, even though the sponsors who, are funding this team are saying you have to go, don't show up. That doesn't work. So
there's also there's also the case of basically, it's the same thing for commentators, right? You try and build out your schedule a few months in advance so you know where you're at. You try and get something reasonable. But what happens when, a massive tournament comes out of nowhere and you're just like, shit, we have to be there. We had 2 events planned for the month. It was going to be pretty nice. Oh, but we have to be at this one. Or what happens when a league comes out, that you're trying to plan for lands, and then a league is just like, oh yeah, we're going to run our league through this period of time as well, and you're in the league, so because you qualified for it or whatever. But we didn't, you qualified for it. We didn't tell you what the schedule was, but now here's the schedule you guys are playing. So maybe you had a reasonable schedule before, and then all of a sudden a league shows up and screws it. I don't think it's a tough situation right now for players because they are trying to, like, don't get me wrong, they are trying to find a balance, but it keeps getting messed with, right? It keeps it's just way too fluid, right? It almost feels like it needs to really just settle down a little bit and have just these are the leagues, these are the lands. Now pick and choose what you want to do, and then you actually have an idea of what your schedule is for the next 6 months.
Yeah, this is for starters, having an off season, like a set off season where nothing happens, would help structure like the short season.
We had 2 weeks this year.
2 weeks. Woo.
Yeah, and then Christmas is obviously
Christmas is sacred, but even then you have tournaments running all the way up until like the 20th of December, and then you're back at it again like come New Year's.
3rd of January.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to
qualifiers around then.
Yeah, exactly. And
the December.
America's is early December. Yeah, but still, like even then, like you can't really look at Christmas as a time off in that, or like an off season in that sense, because nobody's actually going to be playing CS during that time. Like, you're going to spend Christmas with your family, you're going to do all of that shit, and then you're going to go back on the grind. But look at that, you have another tournament popping up in 5th of January, so fuck all your preparation time. It's kind of how it is.
I think there should be a grace period after. I do agree. Like, seriously, like, I know everyone's all these money hungry bitches everywhere who want to run a gazillion tournaments because why not? But I mean, come on, it's too much is too much.
I mean, in the long run, it's probably not going to be beneficial either.
This week, man, it's gonna be sick to see Scoots on the desk. Shit.
Oh, he's gonna have a rough time, man.
Yeah.
In between Richard and Duncan.
Dude, Scoots can hold his own, man.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. But just looking how Jason gets treated during E-League. I mean, I think Scott knows what he's in for, but it's going to be interesting to see. I'm hoping he's like written down some solid comebacks. His reference game is on point. Everything is in check and balance when he gets to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we kind of went off.
Slightly.
Great tangents. I love it. This is kind of what it's about. This is exactly what I want to be doing here. But let's go ahead and try and bring it back a little bit more towards the results, because we're going to start feeding it back into iBuyPower Masters. That was the event that happened this week, and it was an important event because the top 4 teams at that event qualified to go on for Oakland, which is going to be the last big event that we talk about on the show today. Oakland is happening this weekend. If you happen to be on the West Coast or anywhere near it, definitely check it out. I'm sure tickets are still available. You could definitely go over there, have a blast, because it's going to be sick. It's going to be in a massive stadium, lots of fun. So be sure to check that out. I think, Phil, we have a link. If you want to check the tickets, Phil can throw it in the chat, and you guys can take a look. So that being said, iBuyPower Masters. I mean, this was quite the wild ride. This was a good tournament. I mean, both groups, I'll just say the groups real quick unless Phil can show them for us. Cloud9, Tyloo, Echo Fox, and Flipside in Group A. And in Group B, Immortals, FaZe, Renegades, and Team Solo Mid. So, Vince, we'll start with you again. Were you able to catch any of these games? It just felt like there was so much CS this weekend. Wouldn't blame you if you weren't able to keep up. But how do you feel this tournament went so far?
The big surprise for me is that Cloud9 actually didn't win it all. I mean, Immortals are a solid team. They've got some great players. Bolts and Phelps, obviously, were in the forefront. But Cloud9, the way they've been playing, the results they've been landing, the way they're automatic, and Stewie been performing, I thought, okay, they're winning this finals. I mean, there's just no way Immortals take this. And then Immortals beat them 2-1. I was somewhat amazed, and Stewie actually was rock bottom of the main stats, like kills to deaths, ADR. This is a guy that, sure, he's taking more of a leadership role, he's calling the strats and whatnot, but you still expect to see him up there towards the top the way he's been playing. So it was a bit of a surprise for me, the finals. But as you said, it was a wild ride. The matches I was able to catch were pretty mad. Tyloo, though, I'm so happy that we're going to get to see them at IEM Oakland, man. The more games to see for Tyloo. But they come third, fourth for FaZe. How sick is that?
As long as we don't get to watch them on cash, I'm all good.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as VT aren't playing them, I guess we might be in the clear. But yeah, no, I might be like a tiny bit restrained in my joy to watch Ty Lue play at Oakland. Like, sure, it's fun. Like, it's great having a Chinese team there, but I'm not sure how much fun they're going to be having with how they've been playing as of late. Because me and Yona, obviously, we're in Malaysia to do the Asian minor, and that wasn't a smooth ride for them by any means. Like, they looked very all over the place. And I think we talked about, obviously, the coaching role and how that's affected teams, and obviously the first team you think of is Na'Vi. But one of the teams that I think is, if I actually had to like put up a ranking list of how big of a hit teams have taken, or what teams have taken the biggest hit, I would put Na'Vi at the top, and Ty Lue as the second team, as who has taken the biggest hit from not having their coach being an in-game leader anymore. Because the difference between that Ty Lue team with Karsa doing the in-game leading and having Mo doing the in-game leading. No, actually, it's not even Mo now. I think it's Fancy who's doing the in-game leading for that team. The difference between those, it's two completely different worlds. So that's very worrying for me. So Ty Lue, they don't have the luxury of having the firepower that Na'Vi has, and they still have the same issues of not having like a tried and true in-game leader who knows what the fuck he's doing at any given point.
I mean, to outline it, just going off of results, right? Earlier this year, they're a team that could take it to a tier 1 team in a best of 1 and beat them, right? They could actually go toe-to-toe with the best in a best of 1 format. Didn't really shine in best of 3s, but when you get into the best of 1s, anything was possible with this team. Now, they go up against a tier 1 team in the shape of Cloud9, and they get 16-0'd.
Yeah.
So,
with them starting the side.
16-14, 16-10 versus Echo Fox. And we saw what happened to Echo Fox in their Group at E-League when they were going up against tier 1. They got 6 rounds across 3 maps. There's a huge gulf right now, unfortunately, between the tier 1 and the tier 2 in this certain case, right?
But they tried very hard, Sam.
Yeah.
They did try. They did.
In the words of Neo.
It's like one of my most god tier moments ever. Like the most unintentional BM ever, because Neo is like the nicest guy. He tried so hard to find something positive to say, and it just came out as like, it was amazing.
But no, that is very worrying for Ty Lue. That said, I think they're not going home, obviously, or they didn't go home after iBuyPower, and they came to California like sometime ahead as well, so they will have time to get situated and practice and that kind of stuff. So hopefully that will iron out some of the issues they've had, but I still think they're going to have a really, really rough time.
If we go past the kind of mistakes they do as a unit, also like if you go to the individual level, one player that everyone I keep hearing how great he should be is Fancy, right? I mean, we always talk about this, Ben, how he's like the young gun coming in. He's supposed to be bringing the numbers. He's going to be amazing, and then you might be seeing a glimpse of it here and there. You see him win like astonishing 104 in a round where he's never supposed to win it, but you roughly even see like a whole map where he's performing up to the potential that he's supposed to have, right? So I always talk about Ty Lue, though, that as a team they have this depth in individual skill, which is maddening to me. Like they are so sick in their peak, but they are a team that doesn't seem to be finding that peak all too often. Because when they do, you see them beat like actual really good teams. Okay, fair enough. They've been able to surprise a bunch of teams in a situation like, for example, when they beat Na'Vi or Mirage. They did have a rather interesting approach to Mirage CT side. For example, the double catwalk and all that jazz going on. But still, in terms of like the level of play those individuals can bring on the table, they should be able to be much more, I think, beating the kind of teams they've lost to. Like, for example, they lost to my team that definitely isn't the world beating one right now, are they? In a best of 3. Okay, let's be honest, right? And coming from beating friggin' Luminosity and now SK back earlier this year. So I mean, it is weird. It's mind blowing, like what's going on. But then I guess the benefit of the doubt for them is that they haven't had a lot of time outside of their own region. Give these guys a couple months in Europe, in North America, to practice, play against the meta, the type of play that the teams in the Western Counter-Strike scene play, and things could turn around. I mean, that's something we don't really know at this point in time.
Yeah, I think the biggest scare for me is really the fact that you talked about fantasy, because we've seen everybody else, even versus international competition, have actually done really well for themselves, especially DD and somebody. Like Fancy on the other end, it's just he's a region slayer. When you put him in Asia, he does really well for himself. But now he's like obviously more and more going into 2017, he's going to go up against more international competition, and the fact that he's going to have the addition of having to be the in-game leader for that team, I think that's going to either make or break him completely, to the point where it's like either he's going to become like the new star from China, who everyone has to fear in that sense because he can do it all, because he's also like doing secondary opping for that team as well, or he's
going to be seized,
or he's just going to peter out, and Tyloo are not really going to make it happen, or they're going to have to replace him, something like that. We'll see. It's it's going to be an interesting couple of months for Tyloo for sure. But I think it's obviously like they have a few things going their way. The fact that they've been able to obtain multi-entry visas, like 10-year multi-entry visas, etc., that puts a lot of stress off their shoulders in terms of just having certainty of actually being able to go to tournaments, which has to feel pretty nice. It means they can do extended boot camps in whatever country they feel is optimal before multiple tournaments and so on. So yeah, I think they can only get better from here, from what we've seen in the last couple of months. But I don't think it's going to be in time for Oakland, to put it that way.
One of the bright spots, though, in Oakland at least, is that they're in Group A as opposed to B. And I think most people would agree that B is kind of the group of death there. A has a few teams like Liquid, for example, who are struggling lately. So maybe this is their gateway to actually take down some maps and to get a bit more experience, as we're talking about. They're against the likes of G2, and you're mentioning before how they have these sick peaks, like individual effort is crazy. Well, we were just mentioning before that G2 were struggling a little bit when it comes to their strategy. So maybe that for me is going to be a really interesting match to watch. So I think they've got a chance at maybe causing a few upsets at Oakland. Do I think they'll go the distance? Of course not. I don't even think they'll get out of the group, but they could get a couple wins there.
Yeah, I think they're going to be the team that they don't make it to the bracket stages, but they can easily fuck up for someone who was supposed to go to the bracket stages. I think that's kind of the way you have to look at Tyloo, and at least if you're like setting your hopes up for how they're going to do at that tournament, I think you're just going to have to look for, just like one match at a time type of deal. So if they can mess up for some of the big dogs, then that's, you have to take that for what it is and just be happy about it. Can't expect anything more at this point.
It's going to be real tough to run the gauntlet looking at the groups for Oakland. Hold on. So, I mean, the four teams, that was the main thing here going into it for Oakland, is that you were going to have the top four from iBuyPower Masters qualifying for Oakland, right? Which kind of felt a little silly. Just, when your goal is to make top four at the tournament, but there's still like a finals and everything else to play out, right? Not the best format per se, but still, I mean, money on the line. It turned out that Immortals
won.
Why
don't you instead?
What's that?
My suggestion is, why don't you instead try to make you have 4 spots, right? Just make you'll have 8 teams battling for those 4 spots, right? So you'll have 4 games. Why don't you just make 4 separate finals and just there'll be 4 winners?
There you go, right? You get one best of 3, you win, you're in, or you lose, you're out. I mean, it's a best of 3 too. Like you wouldn't have anything, but then again, it's not a lot of broadcasting time, and it's not a lot of viewer minutes not to, and you got.
God damn it!
Gotta deliver to your sponsors.
Gotta make that Skrilla.
Gotta make that Skrill. Yeah. Right.
But I mean, the other teams, obviously, outside of Tyloo, that qualified for it. I think Vince mentioned it initially. The biggest surprise probably is Immortals winning the entire thing.
Yeah.
At least to me. Especially with the new lineup as well.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
No, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, they have definitely not looked like a world-beating team. So, for me, actually, Cloud9 has seemed like a team that could consistently find a certain level of play. So do you think that they'd be beating teams like Immortals right now, considering the place they're in? So, yeah, definite surprise for me.
So do any of you think that Immortals are actually going to be able to well, obviously, not going to repeat and win Oakland. I don't think any of you are going to go that far. But do you see them making it through the bracket stages at least to start things off?
Maybe.
It's possible.
They're in Group A, right? So they're
exactly.
They're the groups.
I don't really know what to. I mean, Liquid is in shambles, right?
Yep.
Navi is a massive question mark. G2. I mean, come on. G2. Wait, what the hell? Astralis. I mean, apparently winning the major. And that Tyloo.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know. I mean, it is also like an ace up the sleeve that we have no idea.
All of Group A is just like a massive question mark.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's it, exactly.
Good luck. Have fun making predictions, boys. Whoever is going to be doing that, I wish you luck.
That's what it goes back to Tyloo thing, man.
That's what we're going to be doing. So start putting some thought into it, Natsu.
Get wrecked.
Jesus.
Oh, God damn it. I'm going to, yeah. God damn it.
So that was so I mean, we talked about Tyloo, talked about Immortals. Cloud9, I think it's a fluke, but it shows a bit of just how heavily Cloud9 rely on Stewie to show up in the games, really. It's
automatic too,
said since the beginning. If he doesn't show up in a game, Cloud9 struggle, and well, that's kind of what happened in the finals. So unfortunate turn of events there for Cloud9, but then again, they get second. They still make some skrill, and the most important thing is they are qualified. What do we think about FaZe though? Like, is this an expected result? I mean, considering their recent run.
Honestly, they could have so easily been in the finals. They probably should have been in the finals. Let's be honest, because that game versus Immortals, I don't even know what the fuck happened there, but that was like a classic FaZe throw.
I mean, I think FaZe. If you look at the lineup, I think it's evident that it's like a team full of dynamite, explosion, so much skill. I think they have a nice diversity of different skill sets too. But their massive issue is the fact that they haven't been able to practice enough with Karrigan either. Right? They've been traveling so much that it's just they're going to be having to wing a lot of the things they do. Which is kind of what they've been used to doing. That's FaZe, after all. They haven't really been the kind of team to have a lot of groundwork done, and a lot of teamwork, or like kind of execute heavy kind of a gameplay. So I guess they can go by it. But I wasn't surprised that they went through with this group and went to be a top 4 iBuyPower to be in Oakland.
How much time was in between their E-League group and iBuyPower? 2 weeks? 2-3 weeks?
I don't know. I've been watching Alu's Snapchat, and it's just literally been airports, hotels, and that's about it.
Yeah, no, they were. It was 3. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, basically.
Okay, so they had. Wait, how? Wait, do you remember the date for that?
October 21st was Group A.
Okay, so they pretty much
I think they had a week at home. I think they had a week at home.
Yeah, because they announced Karrigan as a part of the team pretty much as they enter the stage of E-League.
Yeah.
And then they go straight from there to Sao Paulo.
Sao Paulo, yeah.
And then that's when they have the 1 week at home.
And then they swap a player.
Yeah, as you would. And at that point they go to iBuyPower Masters. So they At most, they've gotten like 2 days of practice or something.
They haven't had any time at all.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have it for Oakland as well.
Yeah, but considering the circumstances of that team, I think they've first off they qualified, so that's good, and they should have been Immortals, and I think they would have beaten Renegades in that upper bracket finals to get into the grand finals versus Cloud9. I'm not sure if they would have won it versus Cloud9, but still think they easily could have gotten into the finals of that tournament. So trajectory of FaZe just with Karrigan, I think looks more promising than it has in the past.
I like this lineup right now. I think you have a good dynamic going for it.
Same.
Jakem I think he was struggling for sure. I think he has a lot more to offer than he was able to show after basically post Cluj Napoca. That's the tournament he went off, and then afterwards he kind of disappeared from the big picture. But I definitely do like the look of this team, and I think we will have to give them a bit of, like, let's say early next year when they really do get to have some time. I guess they'll have some time after this, do they? When they get back from Oakland towards the major qualifier. I don't think they're going to anywhere between Oakland and
If they have anything scheduled, they should cancel it because
definitely.
Like, and grind is going to be the big thing.
Exactly. Then give yourself that 2.5-3 weeks to just grind it out. It's going to be a tough, one heck of a qualifier.
Yeah, you kind of said exactly what I was going to say, to the point, give them time, see how Kerrigan fits in. I'll be very curious to see how they perform at Oakland, though. I think Oakland could give us a couple of early warning signs as to what these guys are capable of. Again, it's a pretty stacked group, so any victories, any close maps, and I think you're going to get more of a flavour as to what FaZe are going to be offering. But I think they could even challenge maybe to get out of the group. Perhaps it sounds like a crazy claim, but some of the teams are kind of struggling above them right now. So, I think Group B isn't even like an ironclad guarantee who's going to go through. I think both groups are kind of question marks to an extent.
They are going to be very close. I mean, we might as well, like we've talked about our Power Masters now, so we might as well just go ahead and focus fully on Oakland at this point. Just big tournament. Lots of cash on the line. I think it's like 300 grand for the prize pool. Yeah, 300 grand, 125 to first. It's prize winnings per victory. So I guess they have some kind of kooky model. Teams receiving an additional 1,000 for each group stage victory. So, make a little bit of money, even if every win matters. Every win counts, I guess, is the main thing. So even if you aren't going to make it into the playoffs, you still want to fight just to make a little bit of money. But
play for the bar tab that night.
Exactly right. That's pretty much it. Nico, looking at you. So I mean, what are we gonna make of it? Group A, yeah, we've kind of gone through that. Na'Vi, G2. I mean, Team Liquid.
Even with all the question marks, I have my three favorites in that, and it's the usual suspects in that sense. It's Na'Vi, G2, and Astralis.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean,
it's nothing earth-shattering there.
It's a safe bet. It's a safe bet. I see how you like bet, Ben. Don't swing for the fences. Just hedge a little bit.
I mean, I could go full retard and be like, Tyler's gonna win the group without dropping a map. Obviously, Team Liquid bouncing back, gonna get second, and we're finishing off with Immortals. Na'Vi not gonna get a single group stage win. Disbanding, of course, right after Oakland.
Well, they may very well do if they win that.
I'm not going to go that far. So, no, it's like the three usual suspects in that sense. Because even with how up and down all of these teams have been, like Na'Vi have too much, they haven't fucked up badly enough to the point where you can start doubting them, in my opinion. G2 as well, even on a bad day, they can make it through a group like this. And Astralis had their first positive result in about 4 months. So, feeling the hype. I'm getting on the major winning train of Anders.
For that reason, then, that you just said Astralis with their first positive signs, I agree with you. I think those three will be the favourites, but I would say if there's going to be a difference, Liquid in for Astralis. Right. I don't know. I feel like Liquid may be able to just sneak through because Astralis, they haven't been consistent, right? I think everyone can agree with that. They haven't been a team that's really had this month or two where you're thinking, okay, these guys are on form. They've got into 4th or 5th gear. They're still around 1st or 2nd. So, yeah, I agree. I think Astralis should go through. I think if there's going to be an upset, though, then Liquids may sneak it instead.
You're looking
Speaking of gears, I think Liquid is on reverse right now.
I mean, wait, what? Not to?
He said Astralis is either on 1st or 2nd gear right now, so I kind of say that Liquid seems to be on reverse.
Okay, I got you.
I mean, come on.
On point.
I think it's a fair statement considering.
That's an Immortal joke right there. If anybody's gonna upset, I think it's gonna be Immortals for myself.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I agree. I 100% agree.
They won against Cloud9. They showed a decent form. They'll have had another week to kind of iron out some stuff because I'm sure that this is ESL. They probably won't have practice PCs or any way to practice going into the tournament. But, I mean, they should still be able to kind of tighten things up enough to the point where they should be able to take on the likes of G2, Na'Vi, etc. The main question here for me, everything that it's going to hinge on, Na'Vi, G2, Astralis, right? They are the kinds of teams that should, if you're struggling, you're going to struggle against tier 1 teams, right? That's fair. You're going up against SK or VP or somebody like that, or other tier 1s like NIP or whatever, right? You can struggle there. But when it comes to teams that are beneath them, these are the teams that should really go ham. And that's what makes me worried about G2 is if they lose to Heroic, right, a team that they shouldn't respect, that they should just be able to crush into the ground, right? That's where I'm a little worried about the G2, Na'Vi, Astralis. Like, in theory, if everything works correctly, they should just crush Team Liquid, Immortals, and Tyloo, and that should be it, right? But it's so hard. That's why I'm giving Immortals a chance. They to me seem like a team that could actually take a best of one off of G2, take a best of one off of Na'Vi, right, and upset things.
Yeah, best of one round robin. Things can happen, but we've seen that before. So
it's gonna be long days as well. I have to keep that in mind. This round robin format means it doesn't mean, hey, you show up and you play, so you have to be on point, right? You ate your meal like an hour before, you're energized, you have your monster right as you start, whatever, like, no, this is the marathon kind of format where you're there at like 9 in the morning and you're not leaving again until like midnight, right? And you're playing games all day long. So
Liquid has like the brunt end of that deal as well, because they have the first game of the day versus Na'Vi, and then they have the last game of the day versus G2.
Oh Jesus, I didn't see that. Yeah. Right, I'm changing, boys. I'm all.
It's like, get off the Liquid train. Jump ship right now.
Is there any way to make it right? Okay, round robin. How can we do this right so that you have certain teams that start and then they'll just end earlier, and then certain teams that start later and then they'll end later? Like, is there any way to do that?
I think the easy way to do this, and obviously this is where Mr. Marketing is going to come out to beat you with a stick, and that's playing games simultaneously.
Well, isn't Vince casting there is going to be a simultaneous stream, right?
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
Stream.
There are going to be games going on. Vince is casting the.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, they are actually doing it. Okay,
so when Sam was like, "It's going to be a marathon," I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" I'm casting every single B stream game the whole day,
the whole night.
Hey, come on, hey now. According to the schedule, guys, it's only going to take around 8 hours, and we know that the schedule always sticks.
Nevertheless.
So there's nothing to worry about.
None of us has ever worked a 13, 14-hour day in esports, have we?
Like, this can't go right. This is going to be a breeze.
16-hour day for ESL twice. Like,
true.
If this is anything like Katowice or Sao Paulo, it's gonna be brutal with this kind of format. Yeah. Especially because it's being done remotely, right? Like, the studio is down here in LA, in Burbank. Yeah. So all the casters and all the production will be here. But then the teams are currently up in San Francisco in the Oakland area. So where are they playing from? It just sounds like a recipe for a lot of technical fuck ups.
Yeah, I mean the groups for New York were broadcasted from Germany, right? So, and the teams were I don't remember where the teams were playing from, but they've tried this kind of setup before, and I don't think there was a lot of issues really.
DreamHack have done it before as well. I mean, like, you can do it. You just have to be on point. Like, you can do it, but you have to be on point. Like, everything has to be thought of. Everything has to be, ironed out.
Margin of error is so small.
You have to be working with the same kind of team, right? Like, I think that's why DreamHack did that for Moscow last year, right? Where they had the production in Sweden and then everything else happening in Moscow. And they were able to pull it off, but I think they only pulled it off because it was like the same team and everybody knew what their role was and everybody knew what to do. This is a pretty big operation that ESL have got going. I'm curious to see how it's gonna. Well, I mean, I guess we'll find out, right? Front row seats. Let's go. Woo! Just gotta raise my hands and just be like, ah! Yeah.
Raise your dongers.
All right. So before we take doom and gloom, in advance, Group B, we talked about that being like the group of death out of the two. Honestly, to me, it's the group of death, but it's still more clear cut than Group A, in my eyes.
Mm.
So who would you go for then, Ben? I was thinking like SK and Cloud9. I would say a guaranteed, really. Well, not guaranteed, but I'd put them down as pretty solid choices.
Yeah. I'd go SK, Cloud9, NiP.
Yeah,
and that's full knowingly that NiP are playing with Pith at this tournament and not Mike. So yeah, they've gone back to their original roster, and obviously there's going to be a couple of bumps in the road. There's just how much preparation time they've had, obviously, the last couple of months, or the lack of, I guess. I know that, but none of the other teams left have really shown more consistency in that matter. Mousesport's just like a walking mess that you never know what's gonna, spring. What they're gonna. What they're going to bring to the board, right? Like, it could either be very, very good and you can, start to get your hopes up, or it could be absolutely horrifying to watch. That said, I will admit the fact that, they have been looking slightly better with Lowell, or slightly more consistent in that sense. So that's a positive sign. Heroic, I think they're going to be like the whipping boy of the tournament, or of the group. Even though they did well for themselves in Northern Arena in that sense, winning the group and so on, it's like the level of teams is just higher in this group.
I think for both groups, like I think there might be a lot of close calls in terms of how is this going to end up. Like, we might end up with equal score lines, going for tiebreakers. I can see results going back and forth with these teams, considering the situation a lot of these teams are in, right? In this situation at this point in time, NIP are not on their, obviously, like you said, having added Pith back in the lineup. I think they were both gone for a few days, maybe a week before going in. And Mouseboard's obviously also quite a recent addition. And FaZe, it's FaZe, right? Heroic.
They kind of like an exist, like kind of level to that, where it's just like, who's thinking about FaZe? Like, come on.
No, it was more like you don't. I mean, they like we've been talking about here. They have a lot to work with still to be able to consider, a team that you'd expect to go through a group like this.
It's more a case of the fact that they have a lot of potential, which is a fun word to use with that team. But we talked about it, right? They've had 0 practice days with this new lineup. They've literally just been playing officials and hopping from airport to airport. So having too high expectations and then coming into this tournament, I don't think is reasonable. And then that's not to put them down as a bad team or anything, obviously, but that's just like the reality of the situation. They're not going to be as well prepared as the other teams coming into this tournament.
Don't worry, they should be. That's how we understood it. But I think it's a pretty clear-cut scenario, except that I would have NIP over Cloud9 in the groups. Going into playoffs...
Oh, yeah. You guys were doing, like, in order?
I'm going SK, NIP, Cloud9 for the groups.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't doing in order. I was just saying, like, these 3.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But, like, I'm going to bite the bullet and just say, like, SK,
committing.
Cloud9, FaZe, Heroic, Mouseboards. That's how I'm seeing the group.
See, I feel Heroic will come last because they've got the liquid treatment. They've got the first and last game as well. Yeah. So you're talking before about how harsh that is for a team to maintain focus. It's not like you can just disappear either, because the games are like an hour and a quarter after each other. So you can't just go back to the hotel and say, we got 6 hours off or whatever, let's go for a nap. So I would put Heroic bottom, but yeah, I would agree with everything else you said pretty much.
I can see FaZe being the nightmare. I can see FaZe being a nightmare team for some of them here in this group, like where because they're the kind of team that has so much potential skill and just firepower that if it goes off, then no matter who you are, he might just get shafted by Rain, by Alu, by all these guys basically. So I can see them. I don't think they're going through, but I think they're going to be the ones to be shattering some dreams here potentially and taking that.
Could be a case of bot Alu showing up, and. Is it the good bot?
Good thing I have a jersey ready for that.
Is it the Terminator? Yeah. No, that's cold.
Here's another question for predictions for you guys. With it being best of ones and Nuke seemingly getting played way more now, how many maps do you think are going to go to Nuke here? Because I'm hoping it's not going to be every other map is Nuke. Let's just.
It's going to be the second most played map.
Wait, are you going to have to do observing as well, Vince? Is that why you're
streaming, observing, and casting, baby? Let's go.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I'm fucked, basically.
Yeah, you're actually supremely fucked. Especially because a lot of the teams that are going to this tournament have actually opened up to Nuke.
Yeah, exactly. Fun. So I was curious what you guys think. Are we just going to see like the Nuke show in these best?
It's like Epicenter. It's going to be like Epicenter. It's going to be Cobble and Nuke, top 2, and then we'll get some fluky stuff after that. But it'll be Cobble and Nuke, top 2.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is like, and especially because obviously it's a big tournament, but compared to what's coming up in January with the qualifiers and everything, and then the major after that, I wouldn't be too surprised if some of these teams use this as a bit of a testing ground for their Nuke as well. So, yeah, I could definitely see this being a Nuke fest, much to your dismay. I'm gonna enjoy it. I like watching that map. I kind of I hope we can get GoTV for it so I can run around on my own, because I feel the agony of the observers who have to deal with that map. But
It's tough. Like you talk to the observers, right, and they'll have like a game plan going into the round, but sometimes
lasts about 15 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Your first guy dies, your second guy dies, and you're just like, shit, where am I going? Like you just like, like.
I've done that. I'm actually so pissed because we talked to the Valve devs about this when I was doing observing at Gamescom in 2014. Like we brought this up to them. Like, how about you just make an overview map with 2 layers? It's like it's magical. Like, so one part is going to show the upper part of the map, and the other part is going to show the lower part of the map, and they're actually distinguished. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we like that idea. It's a good idea." Never heard anything.
How about you go and fuck off back to Norway?
Yeah.
Take your ideas with you.
Yeah. And it didn't really go through, it seems like. I mean, to be fair, they had music
it's just
kits
a long
to introduce,
process,
right?
man. Just takes a while.
They had music kits to introduce and everything, so.
We've got great things since.
Yeah. To be fair, they're getting better. They're getting better. We've had gameplay updates and stuff. They released Inferno, which is a fucking amazing map. Like, let's put that out there. It's a really fucking good map. So, it's getting better. I'm still not going to be, super happy until we see like a new RV map for Nuke. But all in due time.
As Yanko just said in chat, don't worry. Instead, we got the revolver. So
yeah,
fair trade-off, of course. Fucking R8, brilliant.
Well, actually,
totally obsolete by now, of course.
I mean, I've actually thought this to myself, like, I should probably stop talking to the Valve devs, because for every time I meet them and speak to them about something, they just go the complete opposite direction when they get back to Seattle. So it's like, talking about like, oh yeah, pistols, like eco's way too strong, you need to do something about that. It's like, okay, we'll look into it. Introduce the ZZ. I was like, okay, next time. Okay, yeah, would be really cool if you could add like the quick scope back to the op or something. It's like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. It's like doesn't make the game like worse for new players, and the ones who really try to get good at it, they're gonna reap the benefits of it. So I was like, yeah, that's amazing. And then they get back and they're like, yeah, we've kind of nerfed the op and fucked up the movement with it and everything. It's like, sure. So at this point, I think I'm just gonna be quiet.
Just say the opposite thing.
These are a really good idea if you add like an RPG into the game.
Yeah.
But at that point, I'm not really sure if they're gonna run with it, right? Like that's the scary part.
Man, this is like it is. I mean, you can understand why people are frustrated. It's not an easy scenario.
No,
not to be a Valve apologist or anything like that.
No.
What I mean? Like it is like they're trying to update the game and go in a direction that they think will benefit the casuals while still trying to maintain the pros. The pros are also like playing at a level that 99.9% of the player base doesn't play at. I don't know, man. It's a tricky thing.
It's incredibly hard, and that's like one of the things. Obviously, when you talk to them and you want to suggest something, you have to suggest something and actually have like an argument for why it's not detrimental to new players and why it's beneficial for really good players. Which is like, obviously you can go tons of different directions with it, but like for the off in itself with the quick scoping thing, I was like, I nailed that down, because new players, they're not going to know, like, it's not going to affect them because they're not going to know what to do with it. And if one of those new players actually puts in the time to be like, I'm just going to run around no-scoping shit for like 9,000 hours, he's going to become a better player because of it, right? So already doesn't fuck anything up for someone who's like just touching CS for the first time. It's not like the off malfunctions or something if it's in the game. And if he actually learns how to use it, he's going to become a better player because of it, right? So I thought that was like pretty nailed down. It's like I didn't see any like holes in my argument there. Still didn't really pull through. But again, like they're balancing a game for 10 million plus players and not just catering to my needs.
I think that's the one thing. I think I blame Quake for this. Like all the FPS players and people that have been around FPS for a long time, basically are just scared of the Quake effect, where catering like for the like having a game mechanic that caters 100% for the top players is going to make a gameplay experience to people where in Quake, for example, you join a server, you're going to one-on-one, you say, oh, this is a funny game, rocket launchers, it's fun to jump around, and then you get a guy who's played it a few times and you get shit on like 47 negative 17, and you're like, yeah, never playing this game again.
To be fair, Quake is a pretty fucking brutal game.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you play Duel and you get fucked and you don't know, like, you don't have the count on armor or like any of the respawns, and you play a guy who still like has a rough idea of what it is, then you're gonna get shot on, and there's no way of coming back into it. At least in CS, like, you can get fucked one round, maybe you have to have an eco, but then a couple of rounds later, you're gonna be back on even footing, and you have a new shot at it.
Yeah, he doesn't have 200 armor and 200 HP quad, and like.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, dude, like, you got all games have swung this way. It's like if you go back and play any of those old games, right? Like StarCraft, Brood War, it wasn't even intentionally like they did. It was made that way because of like almost poor game design. Like they just didn't think it through, like, and it was unintentionally difficult because of that. But then that also made it so you had to work like a motherfucker to get good at that game. WoW Vanilla was like a goddamn nightmare back in the day, but people still think back like, oh, the days of like WoW, like running through barrens for 45 minutes to get from one spot to another. Oh, now it's like instant. It's like shit like that where, we've moved away from it. I think that's like the overarching theme when it comes to devs is that nobody wants to work anymore. They don't, or it's like poor game design. That's the other thing. But like, nobody wants to work anymore. They just want instant gratitude. How do you give them instant gratitude in a game like CS? You give them the CZ. Get wrecked. I got a mini machine gun in my hand. You spent 5,000. I spent 500. Motherfucker, come at me. Like that's it.
Man, the biggest clusterfuck is COD. I don't know if any of you guys played the first couple of CODs, but I know you're old school CS players.
Yeah.
But COD 1 and COD 2, like, you had bolt action rifles, crazy recoil, no perks, no bullshit kill streaks. It was really a skill required game. Like, you had to be a solid player to play at a good level in that game. COD 4, a lot of people love it, but that included perks. And I remember playing it and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, there's martyrdom where someone dies and drops a nade.
Oh, God,
that tilted me more than anything
last
else.
man standing or whatever the fuck that perk was called.
Oh, I'm dead. Actually, just kidding. I'm on the floor with a pistol. Just shot you in the back, mate. Get fucked. Like, it's part of what you're saying. Like, a game changing and just becoming more casually favored. Because now COD's kind of a meme. It's kind of a joke, right? Like, it requires zero skill. It's brain dead. There's like no strategy to it. But back then there actually was. So if there's anyone watching that was an old school COD player, you have my respect. Now it's just fucked. Thanks, boys.
Wait, you didn't like the rework they did?
It's a real dark turn here, boys. We could keep going.
Yeah. We're getting into a dark place right now.
Yeah, we could keep going here. I mean,
I didn't get the remastered version. So I'm not splashing out 50 or 60 euros.
All right, we were talking about game design and how that sort of stuff, right? Where it seems like it's taking a turn towards coddling and trying to just keep people happy. Is this latest bit of drama where it comes to player criticism and it comes to how you handle player criticism, etc., is that a product of the time as well now? Is that something where like 5 years ago, would we give it a shit if somebody was calling somebody out for being bad or for playing poorly or whatever? Would anybody have cared back then versus now, where it seems like it's a massive issue that a lot of people are taking offense to. What do we think about this? I mean, Vince, you actually spoke on the topic, right?
Yeah, open assault mine. It was an interesting experience.
We don't have to go too deep in the salt mine here. We can stay on the surface. We're on a flat lake. There's a lot of salt. We can just stay on the surface.
I'm just saying that I was surprised at how passionate and angry a lot of people got in the community at this. And again, I don't want to get like too philosophical about this or anything, but I feel like it is kind of a reflection of the time that we live in now, that things have changed a little bit. You can't be quite as negative. You can't be quite as straightforward and honest and brutally honest without fearing some repercussion to that. So it's, for me, I'll just pretty much echo what I said in the video that I made, and that's deal with it. Like, I don't understand this concept of being coddled and being in the public eye, being in a position where you're getting paid and doing something that you love doing, a dream job, and you like want all the positives with none of the negatives. Criticism, critique, scrutiny. They're all part and parcel of the job, just as they are for everyone this in this call right now. We've all had shit thrown our way, right? If we made a mistake, we've done something poor, if we just haven't stepped our game up. It's just part of the job. Like, you can't complain about that, in my opinion. I just don't see how it makes any sense.
I think it's a fine line.
You know, we obviously want a safe space in esports, right? I guess is that what's going on? Is that what's going on here?
There is a difference between, I will say before Natu takes over, that there is a difference between just criticism and mocking and, you know, insulting for the sake of getting a reaction. I will say that. I think there is a line. There is definitely a line. But criticism itself, I do not see a problem with that whatsoever. Our job would be dog shit. The casts would be dog shit if all we ever did was praise players and never pointed out a mistake that was made. What would analysis be? Just different shades of adoration, wouldn't it? It'd be crap.
This is a, I don't know. It's almost a triggering subject to talk about, in my opinion, because I mean, it's obviously lowballing, you know, like throwing someone under the bus without justification or giving some kind of a reasoning as to what you were saying. You can't just say someone's, you know, shit or noob and whatever, you know the drill, right? Instead, if you give actual criticism with a basis, then it's normal. It's the way it's supposed to go. It's part of the job. I even heard or read Taz tweeting how analysts are focusing on the negatives and not the positive. That's bullshit. I mean,
that is actually bullshit.
Everyone talks about the positive so much, you know, praising teams, praising plays, and obviously it comes with the team doing less good as well. There's going to be mistakes that lead up to those good things working out just the same. So I don't know what the hell's going on there. At the same time, I think grow up hair balls. Basically, if you can't handle the heat, then stay the fuck out of the kitchen. Don't go to social media. If you played shit, if your team's played shit, don't go to social media. Don't read your notifications. You can turn those off. You can have someone do posting on Twitter, Facebook, whatever for yourself if you don't want to do it. You don't only read the media surrounding CS when you do good if you feel like it. I mean, that's what some of the athletes do. If they want to boost their ego, if they've done well, that's when they go and read the newspapers. They don't go read Community Cancer, or they don't go listen to what analysts say in sports if they've done shit, right?
That is actually it. You know, that
esports, very simple.
Esports players, everybody actually, you know, it's like if we want to, like, everybody's so fond of comparing the sports, right? I mean, sports or agency, you have agencies, basically, you have publicists, you have all sorts of layers between you and the community, right, and your fan base. And that's something that actually we don't really have in esports at all. We're getting it full blast in the face every time because we're on social media every day. We're looking at chat. I mean, this is an unprecedented, like, nobody in sports has to deal with looking at a chat that is instantly, you know, instant feedback coming at them, right? If you're a commentator, for example, and you have the chat open, you're willingly submitting yourself to that. But others in a professional entertainment space, fuck, they don't have that at all, right? They're insulated and they're thinking about what they're going to do next. They're not thinking about, you know, what does Joe Schmo have to say about my play, and more importantly, what qualifies Joe Schmo to actually talk about, you know, what I'm doing, right? Has he competed? Has he watched games? Has he been a professional analyst? Has he done his homework? These sorts of things, right, have to come into it. So if you're a player, this is what I told Smiths, right? You know, because Smiths is obviously getting smashed right now, and I was just like, dude, this is actually the same thing that happened back with Nip and Fiflaren, right? That we were talking about. We talked about this on Counterpoints last week. But like, it was almost the same sort of scenario with Nip and Fiflaren, and Nip and Freiberg today, from what I've heard, is that, you know, both of those guys open themselves up a lot, and they read a lot, and they constantly are on like HLTV and social media, and they're reading all of this feedback, whether they did well or not. They're just soaking it in. Like, there's no way to handle that and handle it in a positive way. Like, you have to insulate yourself. And so when I was talking to Smith this last week at Ely, I was like, bro, you know, have you turned off your notifications on? Like, are you even active on Twitter, or do you just? I'm sure G2 has a social media person that could literally handle your account for you, and then you forget that you even have a Twitter, right? You don't even need to look at any of this. You insulate yourself completely. You live in that little bubble. That's what Nip did, right? They lived in this little bubble where it was the team and nobody else. And so Fifth was able to, like, keep going because of that, right? Because they lived in that little bubble. And it's so hard for a player to actually do that, it seems, because even Smith's, you know, he despite not looking at social media, which is what he told me, right? Like he's not looking at social media. I mean, he's still feeling the heat. Like he's obviously not in a good place right now.
In my opinion, the only person that I can think of is even borderline abusive is Duncan. Like he's the kind of guy who goes deep into the deep end, basically. But for him, that's just another Sunday for him, though. And it's more on Twitter. It's more on social media. It's not on live broadcast. Like he goes certain levels of ham on live broadcast, but he dials it down because he doesn't want to get fired. Fair enough, right? But when it comes to social media, it is brutal. But then you don't have to watch and read his stuff if you don't want to.
No, and I mean, is it so harsh that well, if you're a player, right? The what is it that I can remember recently that it was alternate attacks. He was talking about alternate attacks at E-League, right? And
dude,
it was just like what happened, or like what's going to happen this match? And he's like, they are going to get bodied, they are going to get spanked, but it's just like. Okay, maybe it's not exactly constructive, but it is his opinion that he thinks you guys are going to get destroyed, right? But as a player, do you give shit what he has to say about that sort of thing? Like,
if you think of Duncan's statements about sort of like a lot of teams, he's the one person that can come up with so many different wordplays of how to say someone's shit that it's surreal, right? It's surreal.
You remember Goatsy at Cluj? You remember that?
Yeah.
Where it was like talking about Smiths, and he was just like. You're gonna get in the ass, like, woo!
Dude, come on. Oh well, that's a different topic for a different time. But
I just can't help but feel that people need a reason to get fucking angry. Like, I don't understand this mentality of you're gonna get legitimately triggered and pissed off by somebody saying something about your performance. Just it's the same casting. It's the same for anyone, politician, actor, whatever. If you're in a public eye and you have a poor performance, you do something bad, people are going to call you out on it. It's that simple. If you can't deal with it, why the fuck are you in a job that puts you in the public eye in the first place? Just get out.
The most triggering thing for me about all of this is the fact that, and obviously that's a bit of a sidetrack from the root of the problem, or the root of the issue. That's that so many immediately went to the fact that they go to the staple of professionalism and this doesn't happen in real sports and all that shit.
No idea what professionalism is.
Have they actually fucking watched a sports broadcast ever? Like ever? Literally, the neighboring studio of fucking E-League is inside the NBA. Like if anybody's ever watched Inside the NBA, they would know that this shit happens on a fucking daily basis. Like. They literally have a fucking segment called Shacking a Fool, which is like to highlight fuck-ups from players. Like
and make fun of it. Like not just highlight like, oh well, that kind of stuff.
It's not exactly. It's not like highlighting to be like, oh yeah, he made a mistake here that resulted in a 3-pointer here that was a big part of the game. No, it's literally just like, this guy fucked up, ha, look at him. Like he shouldn't be doing that. He's a professional basketball player. And and then obviously you can go you can make the distinction like, oh well, that happens in a post game or pre-game situation and not during a live broadcast. Listen to Jeff Van Gundy talk about basketball and talk about basketball teams that he doesn't like. Like there's no fucking like silk sheet that he puts teams down on before he goes in. Like no, he literally just speaks his opinion. And sure, it's gonna like piss off people here and there, but it's not like that's a massive fucking issue that's going to break down the entirety of an NBA broadcast. Like, no. And it's not like the players either are going to get massively triggered by it. Like, sure, they might be like, oh, yeah, I heard what Van Gundy said. It's like, yeah, it's his opinion. He's entitled to it. Whatever. I'll just focus on my game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the main thing. I guess, like, what I was kind of wondering about as well, is just like, well, okay, for what, like, the span of the last 3 years... we'll say, right? This kind of stuff gets immediately upvoted to the front page of Reddit, right? And, it's like all of the Thorin highlights, any kind of, funny smack talk sort of shit just gets upvoted immediately to the front page of Reddit. And now, it's a bad thing. So, and now Reddit is outraged. And you're like, but guys, what about the last two? No, shut up. No, it's offensive. Shouldn't be doing. But what about the last 2 years? No. Stop it. Stop. We're on this page now. This is what we're thinking now. Like come on. We need to make up our minds here, or the community need to make up their minds. Like, what is it that they want out of their entertainment? They can't take the player side now. I mean, they can, but it's silly.
The other aspect as well is like now and again you'll see comments or threads made about how biased casters are. Like, so the casters are biased, but they're also too critical and shitting on players. Like, what the fuck is going on here, boys? Like, you have to find some middle ground. This is mad. And someone just said in chat, I have no empathy. Fuck me. I don't even know what to say at this point. my brain's just like melted out my ears. You don't think that someone in the public eye should be made of glass? You have no empathy. Brilliant. Definitely a balanced argument, of course.
And also, the players have a right to fight for their safe space. Get the fuck out! Your safe space is not to read media. Exactly. Come on, it's your fucking choice.
No one makes you read social media. No one. Just like they don't make
us
read social
media. It's part of the big picture, and I mean, it's only natural that things in a sporting environment, critique and bashing, and not even bashing, I think it's the word wrong, the wrong word, but like, for the lack of a better one, happens. So I mean, it's your choice. I think it comes down to the teams, organization, the sport being relatively young when it comes to handling this type of shit. Like when it comes to like sports teams who have a lot of history, to understand how the game works in terms of media. You know, they have people behind the scenes making sure the players have specific standards that they go by. You know, they don't read on stuff and blah blah blah. They give them training how to handle this shit, basically, right? And we don't have that in any sports, do we? Like, I don't think any team really thinks about that kind of stuff at this point. And like some were saying, we're so social media centric. Like everything happens on Twitter, on Facebook. And that's where everyone is all the time. They're making themselves like kind of they're building their brands through that channel. So it's a tough pickle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're never going to have that like rose and red, path to success in any sort of career, right? So if you're building your brand through social media, then you have to be open to the opportunity of having backlash thrown at you at any given point. That's just the way it is. Like, there's no escaping it. And yeah, I think core of it is it's like I think Vince hit it nicely on the head initially when he said like that. It was like
oh no, sorry. No, I was like somebody in chat was saying something that just instantly triggered.
Yeah, okay, just keep that in mind. But yeah, no, it's like there's definitely like a distinction between obviously just like highlighting mistakes or critiquing and actually just mocking people. Yeah, of course. Like there's a line there, but I don't think it's gotten to the point where, at least in CS, where we've gone just completely haywire and they're just shitting on everyone we see. Like that's just simply not the case.
No, I don't think so either. I mean,
Metis, how triggered are you?
The reason why we're talking about social media is because this is the point that keeps coming up that seems to blow people's minds. It's just like, A, professionalism has nothing to do with it, and B, social media is your opinion. You know, if you're it's one thing to say something on a broadcast, and I mean, well, man, do we have to go all the way into like the definition of professionalism as what it is when it applies to an analyst or a commentator? I mean, professionalism is responding to emails on time, sending invoices on time, showing up to call times on time, not looking like shit when you show up for work, having done your homework, your preparation for the tournament. All of these sorts of things are professionalism. Not cursing is one of them as well, right? You know, you're not going to show up on a big broadcast and say, fuck all these, like, no. That's okay. That's it. Making jokes is just opinion, and that's your persona. That's what you do, right? That has nothing to do with professionalism. The people who think that, he made a joke that I don't like, he's so unprofessional. Just like, the fuck are you talking about? What are you on about? Like, that is the person doing their job. And social media aside, right? When it comes down to social media is that person's opinion. It is not tied to the show. It is entirely their own thing. So if you don't like what they say on social media, you unfollow them or you block them. It's that simple.
It's this mad idea, isn't it?
Crazy.
What a fucking concept.
They should be professional. They should be professional after the event. Yes, they are being professional after the event. They're watching the games. They're following the scene. They're staying on top of stats, on top of player records, on top of match history. All sorts. That's being professional, applying to the job. Tweeting funny shit that they think is funny on Twitter. That's them fucking around. That has nothing to do with it.
I mean, okay, I lived through the days of playing CS when the skin betting was at its high, right? I was playing a lot of games where a lot of 10-year-olds lost a lot of skins, right? And I mean, looking at my mentions on Twitter, if we lost a game, especially a game that we were not supposed to lose, the number was always high. It was funny. And my Facebook page, I got so many messages just wishing I'd get cancer and die. This to die. Hoping all my family dies, basically. So it's I didn't read it. I laughed it off, all the Facebook stuff, because you always get a notification. I just laughed it off. Didn't give a fuck. And then when it comes to Twitter, I never read it. I wasn't dumb enough to go to the HLTV match comments, or going through a VOD watching the chat or something. Who the fuck does that? It's all a matter of just not doing it.
A person who likes to sit in the closet and flagellate themselves,
unless you like to punish yourself by doing that, or you're good enough, you feel that your confidence is high enough so you can read it through, and it's not going to affect you. There's people out there that they can go through all that. They don't give a fuck. They'll wake up next day, and it won't make a difference in his life. But those people are very few in between. Not a lot of people can do that. So, I mean, I gotta say, I mean, I think life has taught me into being a very, very, or has made me a strong person. But I still didn't want to go and willingly read through all the shit that was thrown at me or my team when we lost a game that we're not supposed to, according to odds or whatever.
Yeah,
very, very simple.
That's the thing, right? Like someone even said, Anders, there, a guy who's universally loved in this community, has very few people that despise him. Most people recognize him as one of the best casters in CS. He gets shit. He gets vitriol. He gets hate. It's just part of being in the public eye. This notion blows my mind that people don't understand that we all get it. It's not just the players. Sure, they may get it to a higher extent. They made it more on their performance in game if they miss things like what Smiths did. But it's the same for everyone. If I make a colossal fuck up in a round and just miscast it completely, that's going on Reddit. So where's the fucking difference there? Everyone has to deal with it. It's just put themselves out there, and I just don't understand why this has came up time and time again. This isn't the first time it's came up either. Every few weeks, every few months, you'll see a thread like this made. It may not get to the front page, it may not get the traction it's got, but you will have this popping up time and time again. Leave players alone. You don't have a right to criticize them. It's part of the job, boys. It actually is exhausting me even thinking about it, because I just don't understand.
So let's stop. Let's move. I didn't want this to actually this went a little bit deeper again. Dude, we got these rabbit holes that just keep opening up, and we're like, oh yeah, just try it in, All right, let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and leave it at that. I think we all kind of got our opinions out there, and we'll leave it at that. I mean, really, that was kind of what we need to end the show on, I guess, because we've covered Oakland. Let's see. If we want to come back to Oakland again, just for a last time, I'll get it from you guys. Group A, who do you think is going to make it through, starting with you, Vince?
Group A for Oakland. Let me just bring this back up again so I don't get them mixed up. Yeah, so I think we kind of all decided that G2, Astralis, and Na'Vi should be the three going through. So I'm going to stick with that. I feel they're the favorites.
Yay, nay, not too, Ven?
Yay. I agree. I mean, Immortals are the team that can surprise, considering how they've done at the other Power Cup. But it does seem like this should be the way the tournament goes.
All right. Group B, SK Gaming, NIP, and Cloud9 is what I had in that order. What do you guys think?
I would agree.
Have the same teams, not the same order necessarily.
Not two?
For me, I think something I said earlier is that I think the joker of this group is going to be FaZe, because of just how good they could be individually. I think they might be the ones shattering some dreams, or getting that upset win here and there. So that could really make a surprise in a sense. But I think it should be the way you guys said.
Well, fantastic. Let's see here. Do we have anything? Could watch it 3 minutes if you want. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, Phil. Phil, what is this?
You got the one thing, Phil Link, though. Like
Shacked and a fool. That's right. That's what that. Yeah, there is Shacked and a fool. I mean,
yeah, that'd be a nice way to close it out.
You know what? All right, we're gonna close the show, and Phil, you just throw up Shacked and a fool. I'll write a quick message to Turner, be like, please don't sue us, and it'll be all right. All right, guys. Thank you so much, all of you guys, for joining me. Seriously, Vince, Natu, Ven, another good show. Lots of good opinions. If you happen to tune in late, definitely the VODs will be up pretty much immediately. We're up on Soundcloud as well, so if you want to have something to listen to on your way to work, on your way to school, whatever, be sure to check all that out. All the links will be there. But that's going to be it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll try and do one again next week. So until then, peace. See you.